IELTS by the way, writing tutorial.
Hello! This video provides only the essential information on preparing a line graph report for Academic Task 1 IELTS exam. From this video you will learn essential information about the line graph, a Band 9 answer structure, a strategy on how to correctly write each paragraph for a perfect answer, specific vocabulary that must be used in the future,
An exciting example of a line graph report.
What exactly is a line graph? It is an infographic that visually represents quantitative values that change over time. The information presented by line graph must be converted to a written report during the IELTS exam. What are the main elements of a line graph? Here we have a line graph. The title. The title presents an explanation of what is shown on the line graph. The title helps the candidate identify what they are about to describe. The key is also called legend. The key explains what each line represents. Also, the key tells us that the colorful lines represent different countries or activities. Lines. Each line graph has several lines. Each line indicates how the values changed over time. Lines have its points with the minimum and the maximum value, peaks and troughs. The peaks and troughs in the line graph highlight the main trends. There also are periods of stability. Last but not least, fluctuations, when values change often. Axes. Each line graph has a vertical and a horizontal axis. In most situations, the horizontal axis shows the period, and the vertical axis is used to depict something that is being observed. The source of information. In our case, it's always given in the task description.
Before starting the writing, it is essential to spend around 4 minutes analyzing the question and looking for the main trends in the graph. It is a fundamental part of writing. Pay special attention to the units that used in the graph.
What do the candidates for the IELTS exam need to do with line graphs? Candidates must digest the information from the line graph through the use of visual data, deliver the main features, and make comparisons in the form of a written, logically organized report. It's time to look at the example. This task card presents the task description and the line graph. On the top you can see the task, and on the bottom the line graph. The task says, the graph below shows the number of cars manufactured in 4 different countries between 1990 and 2005. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. The line graph. On the right side of the graph there is a key with the description of the lines. The 3 lines depict the changes in quantities of cars manufactured by each country. The vertical axis shows the number of cars produced each year. The horizontal axis shows the period. Now let us have a look at this Band 9 scheme structure. Ideally, the report should consist of 4 paragraphs. Introduction. Simply paraphrase the task. Overview. The most crucial part, it's necessary to identify the trends. Body paragraph 1 and body paragraph 2. In body paragraphs 1 and 2 describe the trends from the overview in detail. By following this structure, scoring in Band 9 is not an issue.
Now we are going to write our first paragraph, Introduction. Here I provided recommendations for a Band 9 introduction. Remember, introduction paragraph must include no more than 2 sentences. Simply paraphrase the task using synonyms as much as possible. Include the period of time if it's applicable. Finally, mention units of measurement such as liters or tons, depending on what is given on the line graph. Before we all start analyzing the example, let us consider some additional vocabulary for introduction writing. I provided some examples of how to paraphrase verbs from the task. The line graph shows information about how much. Paraphrase 2. The line chart presents data about the quantity. The line graph depicts data on. Paraphrase 2. The line chart highlights numbers of. The line graph illustrates the numbers of. Paraphrase 2. The line chart shows the quantities of. Some examples of how to paraphrase the period of time. In 2007 and 2020, to during 2007 and 2020. In 2020 and 2022, to in the year 2020 and 2022 respectively. From 2000 to 2022, to between 2000 and 2022. My example of introduction. On the top you can see the task, and on the bottom my answer. I will demonstrate how I paraphrased the task and wrote the introduction, word by word and phrase by phrase. The phrase graph I changed with a line chart. Instead of shows I wrote demonstrates. The numbers of cars identical to the quantities of vehicles. Manufactured changed to produced. Here you need to pay special attention. I changed the phrase in 3 different countries to Japan, China and Italy. This information is not given in the task description, but the line graph itself. You should always follow this way, as it demonstrates that you read the graph with a high level of attention and clearly understand the task. The phrase between 1990 and 2005 should be paraphrased for throughout a period from 1990 to 2005. The final sentence is not shown in the task description, but mentioned as a recommendation to the Band 9 introduction. You will always find this information from the line graph. Its units of measurement. I wrote, the values are measured in thousands of cars. Here you see the introduction that consists of 2 sentences. The first sentence is just the paraphrased task and includes the period. The second is the description of the units of measurement. Paragraph 2. Overview. Before we start, look at the list of recommendations for a perfect overview. Describe 2 or 3 main trends from the line graph. Give only general information from the line graph. Do not mention dates or values in your overview. Detailed information will be described in body paragraphs. Make comparisons. It's a compulsory as it's asked in the task. Remember, always start your overview from the phrase overall it can be seen. It's the indicator for the examiner that you write an overview. It's time to identify the main trends in the line graph. I provided 2 different approaches. The first approach, based on identifying which lines have an upward trend or a downward trend. Step 1. Identify if 1 or 2 lines go up and assign the first trend. Step 2. Identify if the other line goes down and assign the second trend. Step 3. Group the information and make comparisons. Let us look at the line graph from the task. As we can see from the graph, all 3 lines have a pretty similar pattern. This will be our first trend. The number of cars manufactured by each country increased dramatically over the period. To identify the second trend, we will use the second approach. The second approach is acceptable if all lines follow a seemingly similar pattern. For instance, if all the lines go up over the period. Step 1. Find which line has the highest and the lowest values at the beginning of the period. Looking at these lines, we can see that the red line that demonstrates the values of vehicles constructed by China has the lowest value. The yellow line that shows the number of cars built by Italy is more significant than the red line. The blue line that indicates the number of cars manufactured by Japan has the highest value at the beginning. We're right, initially China manufactured the lowest number of vehicles, while Japan had the highest value. Step 2. which line has significant changes or fluctuations or might be a stable period at the middle. The graph shows that the three countries experienced a significant upward trend in the middle of the period. However, as the time during the actual exam is limited, this information will not be used. Step 3. Which line has the highest and the lowest values at the end of the period? The red line had the highest value at the end of the period, while the yellow line had the lowest. Thus, China outperformed Japan and Italy in the end. We write China outperformed Japan and Italy in the end. Step 4. Group the information and make comparisons. At this moment, we combine the information from step 1 and 3 and have trend number 2. At this moment, we should group the trends that we have collected. All 2 trends must be included in our overview. Below the line graph presented the overview. Pay attention. According to the recommendations, the first phrase is overall it can be seen. Then was included the first trend that was identified with the first approach. Look at the adverb dramatically, customarily used when significant changes happened. Further was included the second trend identified with approach number 2. To make comparisons and ensure coherence and cohesion, I use specific words highlighted in yellow. These words are interestingly and however. Again, these words serve as the indicators of comparisons and make the overview sound logical. Let us read the overview. Overall, it can be seen that the number of cars manufactured by each country increased dramatically over the period. Interestingly, initially China manufactured the lowest number of vehicles. However, it outperformed Japan and Italy in the end. That's all for the overview. Body paragraph 1. Before we start looking at the example, let us consider some additional vocabulary that should be used for writing a body paragraph. To describe downward trend, there was a period of a gradual decrease. Demonstrated a downward progression. Shown a downward trajectory. Depicted a downturn. Experienced a declining trend. Illustrated a rapid downward progression. To describe upward trend, there was an upward growth over the course of the year. There was a sudden increase in the number of. Demonstrated a rapid upward trend. Shown an upward trajectory. Experienced the most dramatic increase. Illustrated the most significant escalation. Verbs to describe trends. Upward trend. Escalate, skyrocket, soar, increase, rise. Downward trend, decline, drop, decrease, fall, plummet. Stability or plateau, flat, level of, stabilize, remain steady, remain constant. Fluctuation, oscillate, fluctuate, destabilize, vary, swing. This is how I wrote my body paragraph 1. Again, in body paragraphs we describe the trends from the overview in detail. In the first body paragraph I described only the first trend. Initially, in 1990, there was a significant upward trend in all countries. Thus, China started at 250,000 cars in 1990. This value soared to 900 in 1998, while Japan and Italy began at 450 and 300,000 vehicles, and by the year 1998 reached peaks of 1100 and 750,000 automobiles respectively. We are going to analyze each sentence of this paragraph. I used different colors to explain. The adverb initially, highlighted by the red color, is an alternative way to the collocation at the beginning of the period. By the yellow color, I highlighted years and amounts of vehicles produced. For example, in 1990, and 250. Started, soared, began, reached are verbs colored by green to call attention. These verbs are customarily used with the main numbers. The adverbs thus and while are highlighted by the red color and serve as the elements of cohesion and coherence to link ideas between sentences, make smooth transitions, and make our writing logical. It is pivotal to use synonyms. One of the key words from the task is the word cars. I use several synonyms such as vehicles and automobiles. Examiners are looking for a range of vocabulary. Body paragraph 2. Before we start looking at the example, let us consider some additional information that should be used for writing a body paragraph. Adjectives for nouns. We use adjectives to add details to nouns, to make the description clearer and more enjoyable. Adjectives help express the tone and feel of the words, provide specific information. Customarily, adjectives precede nouns they modify, as long as in body paragraphs we describe the trends in detail. We should use adjectives that make the sentence vibrant. Examples of adjectives that should be used in writing body paragraphs: sharp, strong, significant, dramatic, gradual, rapid, slight, steady, abrupt, considerable, steep, spectacular. Collocations with nouns: steady increase, significant growth, marginal decline, sharp increase, dramatic drop, sudden decrease. Adverbs. Adverb customarily used to describe verbs, adjectives, and clauses. In sentences, we use it to add specific information, assist to describe how things happen, visualize the intensity of actions. Adverbs assist to control the perception of the examiner when they read the writing and usually answer the questions how, when, where, how often, and in what way, to what extent. Examples: significantly, marginally, sharply, dramatically, suddenly, rapidly, steadily, incrementally, gradually, considerably. Examples with verbs: dropped significantly, grew marginally, rose sharply, increased dramatically, fell suddenly, escalated incrementally. Adverbs and adjectives are not just important, they are essential. This is how I wrote my body paragraph 2. In this paragraph, I described the second trend from the overview in detail. However, after the year 1998, there was a rapid downward trend in production in each country. Japan and China amassed values of 900,000 cars in the year 2003. Meanwhile, the number of vehicles assembled in Italy dropped to 450,000 in 2003. At the end of the period, China outperformed Japan and built 1,000 and 30,000 cars. Japan and Italy constructed 970 and 700,000 cars respectively. By the yellow color, I highlighted years and amounts of vehicles produced. For example, in 2003 and 900. Adverbs and adjectives that were used in this paragraph. Adjective rapid gives specific information about the downward trend, lets us visualize the intensity of the event. Adverb, however, is a conjunctive adverb. It means that this adverb brings the separated ideas together. However, most often used to show a contrast with something that had been said before. In this particular case, it provides a contrast between the years 1995 and 1998, the rapid downward trend after the significant upward trend. Meanwhile literally means something that happened at the same time but in a different place. In this case, it shows what happened in other countries at the same year. Also, the adverb meanwhile links ideas between sentences and makes smooth transitions. At the end of the period is the collocation for a smooth transition to demonstrate what happened at the end and logically finish the paragraph. The keyword manufactured from the title of the graph was changed to several synonyms: constructed, assembled, and built. They are highlighted by the green color. Do not forget to use the adverb respectively. The adverb respectively is a commonly used word to show the same order of the values belonging to the activities or names mentioned in a sequential way. Finally, we can have a look at the full answer.